G'day legends, if you hate cymbal bleed as much as this guy, then you're going to want to stick around and check out this video because I have found an amazing deBleeder for drums that works really well, it's easy to use, and it won't break the bank. I'm talking about THR's deBleed. Yes, there is a bunch of deBleed plugins out there on the market, but there are a couple of features within THR deBleed that set it apart from the rest. And guys, I'll let you know now, if you want to check this plugin out for yourself, there is a link in the description below. You can do a free trial as well. Test it out, see what you think. The first thing we're going to do is to choose a drum to load deBleed on, and we want to use it as our first plugin. Now, the first thing we want to do is to select the drum that we are deBleeding. So I'm going to click on snare, and then the next thing I'm going to do is click on analyze and play the track. So it's analyzed that snare track and it has set the threshold in what it thinks is the optimum position to let only the snare transients through before it gates off the sound. But basically that's the first thing you want to do is set the threshold so it's only reacting to the transients of the drum that you're working on. As you can hear at the moment, this is already doing a great job of deBleeding the snare drum. Whoa. That already sounds great, and we haven't really had to do anything yet. We just chose snare drum and hit analyze. That's pretty much in the sweet spot already. Now over on the right hand side are a couple of settings that we can use to fine tune the gating and the deBleeding. Let's pay attention to this section here, the range. This shows us how far the gate is going to drop. So once the snare passes through the threshold, it's going to drop away 30 dB and cut away any of the noise. We can adjust this to our liking. If we want it to drop away further, we can just click on it and drag down. Or if we want it to be subtler, we can raise the range. Next, the deBleed knob. You can think of this as a way of just turning down the cymbals. So when we're maxed out, you can really hear it is affecting the transient and the color of the drum. You probably don't want to push it that far unless you're really desperate, and even still, you might find that it's taking too much life away from the drum. It even says when you click on it that it is an extreme setting. It actually sounded pretty good around moderate to aggressive. So if you're trying to retain the crack of the drum, just be careful with how much deBleed you apply. The release knob controls the amount of sustain of the drum. You'll hear it more in the lower frequencies. You can hear the ring and the body of the snare. So if you want to let the initial attack of the drum come through without affecting it by the deBleed circuitry, then you can extend the time here with the hold. On this drum, around 25 milliseconds sounds pretty nice. Once you've got that set, you can then experiment more with the deBleed if you need to push it harder. So that sounds really good. You can retain that initial punch and snap of the snare drum, and then the deBleed kicks in and cleans it all up. Now, if we click on settings, we've got a couple of things here. We've got dark theme, and I like the look of that. So I'm going to stick with dark theme from now on. It's just easy on the eyes. It looks really nice. There is also live mode. So if you're using this in a live setting, you can click this on for 0 latency. The only thing is you can't use the next feature coming up, the look ahead, which is a really cool feature for in the studio use. When live mode is deactivated, you have access to the look ahead feature. This is really cool because you can set a look ahead time for the gate, meaning that you can make it open up slightly earlier than when the transient actually hits. This means that you won't chop off the initial beginning of the transient of the drum, which is what a lot of people complain about when it comes to deBleeding plugins. The manual suggests an optimum time of around 5 milliseconds, but we can shorten this and we can extend it out. At 20 milliseconds, you can start to hear the whoosh before the snare hits. You can hear the cymbals coming in as the gate opens up. So obviously that's probably a little too long. And I think sticking with around that 5 millisecond time is actually working really well. There is also a bunch of presets to get you started, and you can also save your own presets as well. You can set an external sidechain to trigger the gate. There is another feature in here called Ghost, which lets us deal with ghost noting. We'll come back to that a little bit later in the video. Let's just start dialing in some drums here, and I'll show you how easy it is to get the kit fully cleaned up. Sounds pretty great to me. Let's move on to our next drum. Okay, kick is selected. Let's dial this in. Hit analyze. It's already set optimum settings for us over here, which is awesome. I'm going to shorten this a bit. Make it punchy. Sounds good to me. So this is our kick out microphone. It sits right in front of the resonant head of the bass drum. That sounds pretty good. Shorten it a little bit. Let's do the snare bottom. I'm going to let a bit more of this through with the hold. That's pretty cool. I'm going to lift the range a bit. Nice. We still got that raspiness of the snare wires. Okay, next up is toms. Now, toms are absolutely notorious for cymbal bleed. What's cool about this is it pretty much eliminates the need to go through and chop up and remove the silence between your drum takes. If you get this dialed in just right, it saves you a ton of work. This is how bad it sounds without anything on it. That's pretty good without doing anything. Let's hit analyze. All right, that's nice. What we're going to do is shorten the release time and then just bring that range down a little bit further, maybe around like 40. Something like that. I want the toms pretty short. Bring up the hold. That's nice. The toms sound great. They sound super clean, really nice. The transient is crisp and punchy, and the low end is sustaining the perfect amount of time. I love that. Let's try the same thing for the floor tom now. Open this up. Shorten this. Lower this. That's nice. The sweet sound of no bleed. That's very good. The toms, yeah, they clean up incredibly. I love that. So that's how easy it is. So we just gated and debled the kit in a couple of minutes, and it sounds awesome. Make it stop, it hurts. That is some nasty cymbal bleed. This just cleans it up so nicely. Have a listen as we bypass deBleed off and on in the context of the full mix now. It sounds awful when we don't have deBleed on there, so it is doing an amazing job. Now, I did say we were going to circle back around to the ghost button, so I want to show you what we can do if we have ghost noting in the track, because that can be a little bit of a tricky thing when you're gating drums and you're deBleeding them. How do you deal with ghost notes? Because sometimes you don't want to lose those. So when we hit the ghost button, it drops the threshold about an extra 20 dB, which then lets through all of the softer notes. We're losing the ghost notes here. Activate ghost. Pretty cool, right? So it starts to let the ghost notes through. What you need to do with this is automate it on and off when you want to use it. Now, depending on your DAW, you can do this a couple of different ways. In Logic, you can press A, you can go into the automation section, come down to deBleed, and come down to ghost, and then you can click on that and you can just manually write this in. So we can turn it off, turn it on, turn it off again at the end. Simple as that. As easy as that. So I've tried a bunch of deBleed plugins over the last couple of years, and while there are a couple of decent ones out there, I actually think this is one of my favorites at the moment. I think it really covers that issue of losing a bit of transient information at the front of the drum. Having that hold time, but also the look ahead are crazy important if you really care about the front end transient of the drum that you are using a deBleeder on. You've probably noticed that some deBleeding plugins make the drums sound a little bit softer. It's almost like they just round off the transient a little bit. And it's a bit of a compromise, because to do a big high shelf boost of like 10, 15 dB, you're not going to get away with that without using some type of deBleeding plugin on it. So there's always a little bit of compromise, but I feel like this takes us a step closer to having it all, to being able to have that snappy transient, but also being able to have the deBleeding as well. So you saw it in action, you heard what it can do. If you're interested in checking this plugin out, make sure you hit that link in the description below. If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to check out another awesome THR plugin that we reviewed on this channel, then check out Vox Guru in this next video coming up.